Stretch as close to the fire area as possible in such a way that it does not unnecessarily endanger your crew. But I also think that if there's smoke on the floor, you better have a charge line with you, even if it appears that the fire is on the floor above. You never know where that fire might be, and without water in your hands, you are putting yourself in a world of possible hurt.
Enchanted Sky Media.
From the Federal Resources Studio, this is Code 3, the Firefighters podcast, hosted by award-winning journalist Scott Orr. Code 3 features interviews with leading members of the fire service, discussing firefighting strategy, tactics, and other topics you need to know more about. Now, here's Scott.
That's right, and I will not let Parkinson's stop me. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Code 3. This is the show for and about firefighters. We're informing and entertaining members of the fire service, just like you, from coast to coast. Our topic on this episode is stretching a dry line. Way back in Firefighting 101, they tell you where to do it and where not to. But my guest today says the problem is once firefighters gain some experience, sometimes that training goes out the window. And that can lead to firefighters in a world of trouble. Here to give us a refresher on where to stretch dry and when is Anthony Avillo. He's a retired deputy chief with North Hudson, New Jersey Regional Fire and Rescue. With over 3 decades in the fire service, he's an instructor at the Monmouth County, New Jersey Fire Academy and an FDIC instructor, as well as a member of the FDIC Advisory Board. And Anthony Avillo joins me now. Welcome to Code 3.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to have you here. So how often do you see crews with a dry line that really should have a charged one in their hands?
Well, actually, from the incident commander's point of view, you watch lines go into a building and there's already smoke in the building. You know where I see it a lot, to be honest with you? I'm the director of the Monmouth County Fire Academy, and we do a lot of drill ground operations, and I see companies stretching dry lines onto floors with smoke more times than I would like to see. Of course, you've seen it, out in the field, and I can actually probably name 2 or 3 times, and I'm not going to name, any departments or anything, where dry lines were stretched into buildings and they didn't get them charged in time, and guys were killed. Water is your only protection from the beast. And the rule of thumb I say is stretch as close to the fire area as possible in such a way that it does not unnecessarily endanger your crew. But I also think that, if there's smoke on the floor, you better have a charge line with you, even if it appears that the fire is on the floor above. You never know where that fire might be. And without water in your hands, you are putting yourself in a world of possible hurt.
Okay, so we know it's tough to wrestle a charge 2.5 into position, but why can't we just wait until we need the water to ask for it?
I think you can do that, but your experience and judgment and size up of the scene should be the things that guide you in asking for the water. Going into the first floor of a fire building and all of a sudden the fire is not a basement fire, but it's a basement fire that is spread onto the first floor is not good for the crews. Likewise, stretching any line into a below grade area uncharged is unsafe. 2.5s, yeah, listen, they're tough to wrestle with, but for the most part, when you're dealing with a 2.5, it's in a larger building, a commercial building. It's usually a much straighter stretch. But again, you know what? If you're stretching into a smoke condition dry, you're stretching into danger. That's my opinion.
When you see guys doing that, does it seem to you to be more complacency or laziness or bad habit or what? What drives those decisions?
I think it's a combination of all 3. Certainly complacency comes into play. Bad training and bad habits, what do they say? Good luck reinforces bad habits.
Yep.
And the other end of it, too, is, stretching in. And one of the things I put in that article that I had written was, don't just grab the nozzle. You see people going into a building with a dry line, but all they have is the nozzle with them. Once they get to a point where they charge the line, then unless they have some people behind them pushing in who are going to have a very tough job, you can't stretch anywhere. So those are the people that like walk right up to the fire, and I've seen that too. Walk up to the fire, then ask for the line to be charged. Which is luckily I've seen it in training a lot, but I'm sure it happens out in the field.
How long would you count on it taking to get water to the nozzle when you call for it?
It never seems like it's fast enough. You hear them saying, charge the line, charge the line. I'm hoping that, listen, the ideal is when they say charge the line, the pump operator says water on the way. That's what I'm hoping. It doesn't always happen that way, but, I would think if you are, sometimes what happens is, if it's a very short stretch, like you have a ranch or something, which in North Hudson, we don't have any ranches. We don't even have any private dwellings up there anymore. Where that first line sort of gets into position, they call him for water, but the guy doesn't even have the rig and pump yet or have the lines broken. Well, that's one place where you're going to have a delay, and maybe they should be, standing by at the front door waiting for water. A one-story building with a fire in it, you charge a line at the front door. If they're going upstairs, second floor, third floor, if you're talking about, a multiple dwelling, an apartment building, I am thinking that if a chauffeur is not ready to give water to a line that's up on the third floor and ready to go, then he is probably taking too much time to do that, doing something wrong. And again, he may be complacent too. The ideal is that, when they call for water, the water comes. That's the idea.
What occurs to me is the idea that the radio may break up. The chauffeur might be in the middle of grabbing a ladder off the rig to hand it to someone right when you call. Mm-hmm. And, any number of things could delay the water.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that the guys who waited till the last second weren't planning for that.
Well, yeah, that's a very good point, too. They probably weren't planning for that. Because when you're on a line and you call for water, you expect the water to come right away. It's just, I think that's the expectation that most people have. And it don't always happen that way. That's why, you should never stretch to an area that's going to have potential danger in it if you don't have water. I think, especially on an upper floor fire, multiple floor fire, stretching dry to the floor below, flaking it out there is a good move. If it's a large floor area on that upper floor, depending on the conditions, you might be able to stretch up to the fire floor, flake it out, especially if there's a door in the stairwell, which, in some of these older multiple dwellings like we have, there is none. So you're almost always best stretching to the floor below and flaking out your excess line and then calling for the line to be stretched.
I'll be back with more right after this.
Federal Resources is a mission-critical solutions provider with only one goal: to empower and prepare the first responder for any threat, at home or abroad, that they are called on to respond to. Your mission is to protect and defend. Our mission is to make sure you're equipped with the knowledge and training on response techniques to current threats. We'll make sure you know the latest innovations in technology to ensure mission success every time. You look out for everyone else. Let us look out for you. Learn more at federalresources.com.
So let's talk specifics for a second.
Okay.
Single family residents force the front door, make entry, and then call for water, or do you call for water then force the door?
I think you can do both. I think you can do both simultaneously as long as you control the door. Get the line stretched. The other thing that could be happening is as the line is being flaked out at the front door, working those couplings and getting your line ready to go, they could certainly be forcing the door. But once they force that door, if the line's not ready to go, they got to close it again. Not necessarily lock it or close it where it locks, but they have to, control that door, because leaving that door open without water is not going to be good for anybody. The smaller the building, the more nasty the effect will be of an uncontrolled flow path.
Right, but now I'm thinking about the fact that when you go to close the door, you've got the hose in the door, so it's not going to make a tight seal.
No, I'm talking about force the door, close the door up again, have it ready. Once that line is charged and you open that door, then you chock the door open. The only time you chock the door open is when it's like really sort of when a charge line goes through the door.
Got it.
In a one-story building. That's the way I would see it. You know, don't commit to creating a flow path unless you got water ready to go, because it's probably going to be a very quick stretch.
Right, and that makes sense. All right, now multiple dwelling, if we're not talking about a standpipe, crew heads up, say, 3 flights of stairs with a dry line, open the door, then heads down the hallway toward the fire. Are they getting themselves into trouble at this point, having a dry line, or can they still wait until they get closer to the fire?
Well, what I would think is that if the fire is, say, on the 4th floor, bring the line uncharged up to the 3rd floor. Flake it all out, get it charged, and then stretch it up to the 4th floor into the fire area. Again, it will depend on, sometimes you have buildings that have fire doors on down the hall. Like, for instance, if there's an elevator, you might have fire doors. So you may be able to stretch dry right to one side of the fire door, get it charged, then open the fire door, go through the elevator area, open the other fire door, and make you stretch down. Again, it may be a very long floor, so, you have to do a size up and figure out the best stairwell to take. But I was never a big fan of taking a dry line up to the fire floor. Other circumstances come into play, like, the door to the fire apartment is not open yet. So there you may be able to, if you have a large enough landing, bring that line up, get it flaked out, and charge it, and then work your way down the hall. But once that door to the fire apartment is open, that whole hallway and the landing area becomes, it could become not only untenable, but even if it's not untenable, it's going to be, the visibility is not going to be so good. So you might get away with it. You might get away with it. The idea is, if it's the first apartment, as soon as you go off the landing, well, it's not a good idea to bring the charge line up to the landing.
Got it. So you say that you've seen them do this in training exercises, and I'm curious. I mean, I'm assuming you stop them and go, whoa, 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 what are you doing? What's the reaction?
Yes, we do. Sometimes we stop and sometimes we let them go with it.
Just to see what happens?
Yeah, well, you know what? The fires are, we have control over these fires as instructors. We have safety lines there. And so sometimes we're going to maybe allow them to do that. The other thing that we do sometimes, because we have safety lines, is if they bring the line through the door and they don't chock the door, we'll clamp the line. And when they open the line up and they have no water, because they're supposed to open the line up, kind of well away from the door leading to the fire area, and they have no water, and they start to, freak out about it, then we sort of open the line up. We've done it a couple of times. You have to be very careful with that. But, if somebody experiences that once, they never forget it.
Well, it definitely hits home when it happens when you're not expecting it.
No. As a matter of fact, a very good friend of mine was they had come upon a fire. They were returning from a squad run, and had come upon a fire. They called it in as a working fire. They stretched in. They didn't chock the door, and the door closed on the line. When they went to have the line charged, the line charged right up to the door and trapped them on the bedside of the problem. And they wound up having to call a Mayday. This actually didn't happen in North Hudson, but I know the person that it happened to. And, it's just a good lesson of like, you know what? Once the line's charged, chock those doors.
Yeah, it seems like something that, like I said earlier, you learn in the basic firefighter training, but people become complacent and they forget until it hits them in the face.
Yeah, also, the excitement. You know what happens too? You get a department that doesn't get a lot of fires, and you get a job. That's sort of where, people start to forget some of the little things.
Yeah, and we've talked about that on this show, the fact that when they don't have a whole lot of real-world fires, training becomes absolutely critical.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And, you need to go to fire academies. You need that live burn experience where you can make mistakes and learn from the mistakes in a more controlled environment. The fireground's not the place to do that. While we're at it, one of the other things I see that always made me a little crazy is when it's a contest to see who gets the first line on the fire. So you get 3 engines pulling up and all 3 of them stretch a line, and none of them get there. You have a second or third floor fire, and none of them get there. In North Hudson, our SOPs call for the first 2 engines to stretch the first line. And if it's above the 3rd floor, the 3rd engine assists as well. Until the line gets to the fire area, then we can peel some of the third engine off and maybe have them stretch a second line. But, there's nothing more important than the first line. First line don't get there, all the other lines are meaningless.
That's true. All right, sounds like you have a lot to think about here. I'm glad we were able to talk about it. Anthony Avillo, thanks for joining me on Code 3 today.
No problem, man. Certainly my pleasure, Scott. Thank you very much. Be safe.
And we put information about stretching a dry line, as well as how to get hold of the Chief's books. There are several of them on our website at code3podcast.com/dry. Check it out. Here comes your trivia question, but it's not actually all that trivial this time. According to research cited in a report by the National Volunteer Fire Council, what percentage of firefighters are either overweight or obese? I'll accept an estimate here, and I'll have the answer right after this.
Now's your chance to get your hands on Code 3 t-shirts, sweatshirts, and more. Show your support for the podcast that supports firefighters from coast to coast. Just go to code3podcast.com and click on the Code 3 store link. Or go to code3podcast.com/shop and tell the world that you're a Code 3 fan.
Now here's your trivia answer. Between 73 and 88% of firefighters are either overweight or obese, according to the NVFC. It's worth thinking about, no? Hey, we got a very nice email from listener Emily, who said, "Keep putting out great content. My commutes are no longer boring thanks to you guys." There it is. That's what we want to hear. Send your comments to scott@code3podcast.com. All right, that's it. That's all for another edition of Code 3. Thank you for listening. I'll be back next time with more, and I hope you'll join me. I'm Scott Orr, and until then, stay safe.
Code 3 is made possible through the generous support of Federal Resources. Visit them at federalresources.com. This show is a production of Enchanted Sky Media. To contact us, get more information on today's show, or to subscribe to the podcast, go to code3podcast.com.